right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the king of content, Gene Hammett.
I got a confession to make. I crave attention. Wow. That was too much attention. And it's not just any attention. I really want attention. That's not the reason I'm on stage. It's not the reason I started a business. But I crave attention for what I create, for a movement that I'm making where I feel like I'm making a difference in the world. And I share this with you because I think if you own your own business and you're thinking like Landon talked about with a vision, you crave attention too. Because without that first bit of attention, you cannot have the impact you want. So they asked me to talk about the power of podcasting. So I'm going to ask, I can barely see with the lights and the sound, how many people listen to podcasts? Wow. That's about 80% of the room from what I can tell, which is amazing because I love to preach to the converted. It's so much easier. The thing about podcasting, if you're not aware of this, it is such a different form of content creation and delivery. And I'm going to share with you some stories about how it's really making a difference for small businesses. I've got friends that have got million-dollar businesses, but we're not going to talk about those guys today because I'm not sure you could relate to that. And they did it pretty quickly. But I'm going to share with you stories about some guys that are doing it with their own business right now, reaching people and making a difference. And I hope that sounds interesting to you guys. Here's some data. I'm not going to talk about the money. I'm not going to talk about the college degrees. But look at this. 64% bought something with a podcast ad. That's pretty interesting. Now, I don't take advertising on my podcast because I advertise my business. But 96% listen to most or all episodes of a podcast. Think about that. That's the reality of someone giving you attention to 96% of what you create. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And I'm going to share with you why this platform is so powerful. And I want to point this. Whoa, is that me or you? This is a very important number. This is not a small 100-person survey. 154,000 people. And if you don't know about this platform, it's growing very fast. The advent of cars, putting it in there, making it very accessible. Smartphones. I mean, who doesn't have a smartphone here? Raise your hand if you don't have a. We have one. Thanks for stepping up there. The reason podcasting is so powerful for your business, and I want you to think about this as it relates to your business, not just as words I say. Think about the power of this would add to you and your business, your movement, your vision. And I really feel like when Landon was talking about this, he was really talking to me, and I'm going to connect all this together. Connection is something we want for our business. We want this to really, it's about how we make others feel. And I believe podcasting is doing that better than the written word and better than video. And I'm going to talk about why that is. It's also about engagement. Remember, 64% are buying something from an ad? How about engagement of actually listening all the way to the end of a podcast? How about the engagement of people listening to more than one piece of your content? Every time you put something out, they're there to consume it. How about reaching out into new markets, reaching out into new people that have not yet heard about you and your movement, your business, and what you're here to do? and loyalty. Now, don't we all want loyalty within our business? We want and crave the people that we're trying to reach to be loyal to us. There's a lot of competition out there, and there's a lot of competition that seems very similar to you, and there's a lot of confusion. But with loyalty, there's a lot of power. I'm glad you guys got the sound right. And it's transformative. It's truly making a difference. And the reason I know this, I'm going to share kind of a personal story about my own podcast, is because I'm getting letters from people every week about them listening to my podcast and what it's doing to them. I'm getting messages from LinkedIn, Twitter and whatnot. I'm going to be honest, they're not engaging as much as I would like to on the website, but that's part of the medium because they're not actually in front of a website when they are listening to it. If you think about it, where do you listen to your podcast? Most people say the car, the gym, or a run. And that probably gets about 95% of everybody listening. I share these 5 things because they're really important for you to understand with your business about creating content and what it can do to actually create what I call superfans. You could call them raving fans. You could call them advocates. I call them superfans, and we'll talk about why. Here's one of the stories I want to share with you before we get started. A services company wanted to stand out in the crowd. They wanted to really create something different. They're a digital agency company.
As they say in the old days of television, we now stand by for technical difficulties. At least I'm not hitting you with color bars. Sir, your dulcet tones are just so good. You were challenging our mic.
Are we ready now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to start over here. This is a service company that I interviewed on my podcast because I was collecting these stories of people who are making a tremendous impact with their podcast. And so I wanted to figure out where he was before. He was a digital agency company. They make websites. They create digital marketing. And everyone knows people that do that. And he wanted to stand out. And he had a chance to speak at a healthcare tourism conference. And he did some research before. He took the stage, and he said there's 800 people in the audience. There's an opportunity that no one's taking. No one's talking about medical tourism on a podcast. Here's what's interesting. 6 months later, those people were not inspired enough to take action. Maybe they didn't understand the power. So John Cote did that for himself. And he launched that back in April. I remember watching this because we're in the same kind of a membership group, and I'm watching him do this, and he put out all this information. In 3 months, he was getting multiple revenue streams from this part of his business. Everything else in his business was still going like clockwork, but he realized the opportunity he had after 3 months. You guys hear that? 3 months. Because he picked a market and really just zeroed in on it. And I share that story with you because if you've got a services company, what could you do with a platform like podcasting? Insurance. I know Landon poked fun at insurance because, let's face it, it's not very exciting, right? It's just not. But David Saltzman had been in the industry for 35 years and wanted to figure out how he could use his expertise to connect with his ideal clients. And with the Healthcare Reform Act changing everything and all of this stuff going on, there was an opportunity, a gap needed to be filled. And so he created a podcast called Shift Shapers. And that was profitable from day one. He took sponsorship. That was what he wanted to do. And then this was only a few months ago. And since then, he's gotten more sponsors. He's gotten services from it, all because he's filling that one specific gap. So even if your business is tried and true, like insurance, what could you do with the power of podcasting? And this is a very special story of mine. Does your digital business suck? Does it tell you who he speaks to? Jason Swank is a friend of mine. He actually was my boss at one time, but he's actually also a client. And I remember the day when I was all excited about my podcast launching, which I'll tell you in just a minute. He comes back and says, so what do you got coming up next? And I said, really? So we started having this conversation. I'm going to start a podcast. This was in February of this year. And Jason's like, what's a podcast? Why would I want to listen to that? I mean, that's just crazy. And I gave him a few names of some people that were my friends and had amazing content. And he goes away for a week. And he comes back and he says, this is incredible. I'm starting a podcast next week. And I say this because, he's my client. And I'm like, I'm thinking inside, he can't start one before me. That's like, I'm a leader. I can't do that. So I held the reins back on him, and we talked about the things he needed to put in place for that to happen. And since he did that back in, I think, April, I think all of these businesses start in April, he has gotten multiple revenue streams because of this, passive income streams. He's selling products. He's selling his own time and services. He's been asked to, in his first paid speaking gig in London. All because he's using the power of podcasting. And remember those 5 things I mentioned before? Connection, engagement, reach, loyalty, and transformative. That's the reason this is such a powerful opportunity for you guys. If you're willing to accept it, if you're willing to think about how you could do it, not how, what's holding you back, why you can't do it. And one of the things that has in common, if you didn't see the theme, I'm going to share it with you, just very point and specific. And it's this. Each one of those people that had fast growth, hyper-focus. Hyper-focus in who they serve. Medical tourism. Insurance, specifically. You wouldn't listen to this unless you're in insurance. And also, Jason is a consultant. And the thing I share these stories with you because they don't have millions of downloads. I don't have millions of downloads. They have hundreds of downloads. And so you have the chance to do this. There's a lot of other benefits behind this that we're going to talk about. But that's the real thing. And then one of the things that came up with this is they realized that they could not be the jack of all trades. You guys heard that term before? The jack of all trades. No one ever wrote the book that says this is the pathway to success. I looked for it. It really wasn't there. And then I went to Wikipedia and I was doing some more research and I found every language has a translation for the jack of all trades. And if you want to laugh, go for it. I've got 2 here that I want to share with you. One of them is an ocean of knowledge an inch deep.